Welcome to the Off the Track Initiative podcast, the podcast dedicated to bringing a more modern, conscious perspective to the re-educating and rehabilitating of off-the-track thoroughbreds. My name is Kate Moran, thoroughbred racing steward, dressage enthusiast and thoroughbred advocate. Each month I will be sharing with you inspirational stories and knowledge from a variety of professionals who are on a mission to make a difference within the equestrian world. So today we're doing our first international podcast with UK-based dressage rider Nick Turner, who's actually got one of Australia's exports off the track thoroughbreds, who she got up to FEI into 2 dressage. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your morning over there to join us and have a chat about your horse. I really appreciate it.
That's okay, thank you.
So I guess we'll start off by... So you've been based in the UK your entire life. You were born over there.
Yeah. I've pretty much centrally based in England, like as middle of England as you can possibly get.
Okay.
And it's where I've lived like all my life. So my childhood home is about 5 miles down the road from here, and we only moved here so that we could have the horses at home in the first place. And I'm the youngest of 3. And my eldest sister, the 7 years between us, she's horsey. And our middle brother, he's not horsey in the slightest at all. He used to ride, but then he discovered like skateboards and stuff. So it's just me and my sister that are horsey now.
Okay, cool. And were your parents ever interested in horses?
Absolutely not at all. I think my dad regrets the day that he bought my sister a riding lesson as a present, because that snowballed the entire effect. So what that then created, that as my sister was learning to ride, and she learned very quickly, as soon as I was able to put on a horse, she made sure that I was, and then I started having riding lessons from the age of 4. So that kind of kick-started that addiction in 2 of us. And so quickly my dad was faced with 2 young girls who desperately wanted their own ponies, and my mum was quite happy to get involved. I mean, my mum was not a brave rider at all, but she liked being a part of it. So that kind of helped us sort of obtain said ponies, if you like.
Well, that's great. So what's it like, I guess, in the UK? So is it common that you go and start having lessons and then you purchase your own horse? Or I mean, here we have a lot of leases, so a lot of people will start with lessons and then maybe lease a horse, or they just end up with one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess probably the biggest difference for us over here is the amount of land that we have access to. I mean, I live rurally. We're actually in between what you call 2 villages. And sort of for us, being in the middle of nowhere is living like 5 miles away from another house. That's in the middle of nowhere over here, particularly where I am in Leicester. So land is quite expensive, which means that all the facilities that you need for ideally training a horse are also expensive. So we started off, I mean, my sister had her first pony a few years after she started riding, and it was kind of that, then when she got a bit too tall for it, was kind of that made my dad realise, well, rather than having 2 horses and a pony on livery, it makes sense if we get somewhere that's got the amenities so that we can have them at home. And as soon as we have them at home, it gives you a bit more freedom to have a few more and kind of grow the gang of horses and get a few sneaky new additions without dad noticing. So yes, I mean, I actually started off, I had lessons for a few years, and then we leased a very, very sensible pony that me and my brother shared. We leased another pony who was slightly taller, because I'm not super tall, but I'm quite leggy, so I kind of grew out of ponies quite quickly. So we had another pony on loan that turned out to be a rig. And he was really, really naughty. He was called Blue, and he used to put me on my head probably once a day. He went back after about 2 months, and then I sort of had a bit of a fit that I wanted something nice. So we went out and because I started sort of riding in the show ring with native ponies. So we went out and found a little grey pony, and he was very naughty as well, but he was less naughty than Blue was.
Yeah.
So he came home, and so we actually all the yard and everything, we put that in place ourselves when we moved here, because it was a working farm. So it was all a bit agricultural at one point. We had about 7 horses in a barn at the back of the house.
Wow.
And then gradually we built all the stables and everything. So I had my first pony. I had Pip when I was 10. And then I moved on to horses when I was 14. But I lost interest because the pony that I had was really, really, I don't know why, I obviously picked the really naughty ones, except Fig. The pony that I had, I wanted to do jumping with. The pony did not want to jump. So also used to frequently put me on my head. And I lost the confidence. So I gave up riding for about 3 years. And then I only really got back into it when I was about 18. I went to university, and then every time I was home, I was on a horse straight away. And then when I finished university, I got back into it competitively. And that's when I went out looking for a horse and got Fig. So he is really what kickstarted my career, if you like, in it.
Yeah.
He's the founding member of everything.
So it's funny because I think everyone always has that horse that you have your lessons that they teach you how to ride, and then you always have the horses that teach you how to stay on. So like those naughty little ponies. And so you obviously rode all through school, and that was a big part of your life. And what did you study at uni?
I studied business management and marketing, and I now work in insurance. So it didn't really close any doors, but I wouldn't say it opened any either. It taught me how to remember to read a book and study hard, I guess.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. I was quite a few hours away from home where I was at university. So it was quite nice to sort of separate my life from everything at home with the horses, because me and my sister, people always think that despite the age gap, they think we're twins because we just sort of act so alike. So I think it was quite a nice a break from everything. But we're sort of 2 peas in a pod anyway.
Yeah, that's it. And you need something to fund the horses as well. So you sort of need another life outside of horses. So
well, that was the deal. When I came back from uni, I had every summer that I've been back from university, I had a placement at a local company. And they actually offered me a full-time employment place. I think it was sort of after the end of the summer of 2011. And my dad's deal was that you can't buy a horse until you've got a full-time job. And I basically got offered the job at the same time I found the horse. So that was an interesting dinner conversation of, by the way, Dad, I got a job today and I found a horse. But he took it quite well. So that was okay.
So that's it. So I guess the main reason we're talking today is about Figaro. So he is your first and only off-the-track thoroughbred that you've had so far.
Yeah.
And so he raced under. I looked him up. So he raced under Galileo Figaro. And what's most exciting about this is, and ties it all together, is that he was here in Australia for quite a while. Raced, ended up being a bit of a hurdler, going over jumps before he was exported. So how did you come across him? How did he enter your life?
So obviously finishing sort of university as a student in my first job, I wasn't exactly flush with the cash, and X-Races, they do have a sort of a tagline for being a cheaper purchase. And over here there's quite a scheme with retraining racehorses and all that kind of stuff, where there is starting to be a real place for dressage horses to be non-purpose bred, basically, and the scheme runs off into jumping and eventing and showing and all that kind of stuff as well. So it really encourages people that either can't afford to or don't want to buy, high-powered warm blood sport, because they're not for everyone. It's why people drive different cars at the end of the day. So I sort of thought, right, well, at the time my sister had an ex-racer. He was by Dale Army out of an Alzeo mare, and he was very, very quirky, and we lost him due to behavioural issues a few years later than I had Fig, actually. But that was sort of what kickstarted my taste for them, because I remember riding that horse, and he looked like a warm blood as well, in like a very light-footed, prancing kind of way, and he found the passage and the flying changes very easy, and sort of I sort of made that jump over summer to really getting back into riding regularly when I came back home from my education. And it sort of gave me that taste of, yeah, I want a horse that I want to be able to produce to do that. It's so nice making that yourself. So we sort of set out, and I think I must have looked at hundreds, if not thousands, of adverts. And over here, dealers have a bit of a bad reputation sometimes because you don't really know what you're getting. But by chance, I saw this tiny little base speck in the corner of an advert, and it was Fig's advert. And in the advert, it was a photo that I didn't actually use. They didn't actually use sort of when they sent me some further information about it. It was a dealer up in Lancashire who, unfortunately, I think there was a divorce or something similar, and the dealership no longer exists. But it was Panama Sport horses, and I sort of rang them and I was like, look, I'm interested in all the horses that I've seen advertised. Like, could I have some more information, some more pictures? It turns out they had a few ex-racers, so I agreed, even though I was going just to look. I agreed to go off and have just a look with my sister that same weekend, and we went up, and I think I looked at about 3 before Fig, and one of them was obviously, it just sort of visually wasn't my type of horse, and the other one they wouldn't let me get on straight away because it was very sharp, and although I don't mind sharp and I don't mind quirky, I don't really want to get lawn darted or buy another horse in my life. So I was a bit like, okay, that one is probably not for me. And then they brought Fig out, and he was quiet as anything, let you sort of prod and poke him. It was, like a 15 by 20 heat pit school in the dark with it pouring with rain outside, as is typical in the Lancashire area of England. So I was sold. We flexed him, we trotted him up. I didn't even ride him in canter or see him in canter. I just thought, God, I hope it can canter. Agreed a price, and then went home and thought, oh God, what have we done? We've bought a horse. So he came home. I paid for him to be on livery there for about a month because we actually had a full block of stables at the time. And whilst we've got decent land, I didn't really want him to just be out on his own because that's not fair on him. So we sort of arranged to have the space, because at the time we had a companion Shetland pony. But the horse that he used to companion when we went to away shows, we no longer had. So it was almost, like one in, one out. And he went to a forever home. He went to go and be a kid's pony. And then home Fig came on the 23rd of December, 2011. So that was a nice Christmas present for myself.
Yeah, and I had a little read through. And so he finished racing in October of the same year, 2011. So he had a pretty short spell before he came to you. It's funny because we don't have the dealers as such that you have there. We have people that will take horses and sort of rehome them, and we have sales, but we don't seem to have this group of people that will just make a living off of just selling on horses. So it's interesting. Is it sort of quite common over there that off the track horses will go to a dealer to then be rehomed, or?
I mean, sort of. To sort of obtain an ex-racehorse over here, your best bet these days is to approach racing yards, because quite often they'll have something that they're thinking probably a bit too slow or a bit too small, or doesn't really want to jump, or never really wants to get the nose in front, that kind of thing. So the chances are that you'll get lucky just by asking around. And a lot of the racing yards are more honest than people that might be selling them privately as well. And they know the history of the horse as well. If it's only ever been with that dealer, they know if it's ever had any injuries or something. Because sometimes you just, with any horse, you never really know what you're getting if you're not buying it from its first owner. And there's one yard locally. It takes me about half an hour in the lorry to get to. I use gallops occasionally to exercise mine. And the yard is lovely. And I know that he sometimes has a few that are just not quite cut for racing. And I've never heard anything but good things about them, which is what you kind of reputation that you want from a racing yard. But yeah, I mean, we probably don't have them in the same amount that you guys have, but they are sort of a very common type of horse to have. It's, one of those things, you walk into a room of equestrians and the first thing out of their mouth is, oh, I've got an ex-racer. And I'm like, I have too. So they're very popular over here, and they're definitely making some headway.
Good.
But you have to open the most common magazines over here, and there's always a few in the classifieds.
Yeah. Yep. So then going back to, so you brought him home in December, and then what did your first few months with Figs look like?
So when I saw him, because if he was on livery for a month, so I must have seen him roughly sort of towards the end of October, and he was racing fit, but not sort of poor or anything. But he was very, very poor when he came to me in December.
Okay.
He had lost a lot of weight, and he still had his racing plates on, so he desperately needed his feet looking at. The guys he pulled him off the lorry said, I think he needs his teeth doing. So it was kind of get like a full bill of health in.
Yeah.
I sort of personally, I believe in a barefoot lifestyle where possible, only where possible, if it suits the horse. So I took his shoes off. He had 2 weeks downtime. And like I started introducing a bit of in-hand work, but I didn't really ride him until the beginning, more towards the end of January, really. And at first that was just a quick lunge, just because, we've got our arena is surrounded by the field. So I thought, let's not invite death. Let's make sure I'm not going to get lawn darted. So quick lunge, just so we understood where I was. Get on, walk, trot, and I think it took me about a month just to get canter either way. Just because again, he was quite one-sided when I very first sat on him at home. And obviously with having his shoes off, we weren't sure how he was going to take to that. But he took to it really well, to be fair to him.
Okay.
So he did. What did he do? He did his first competition. Actually, it popped up yesterday on my Facebook memories. He did his first competition yesterday in 2012. So it took us about the best part of about almost verging on 6 months, really, to get him to go and do a quite little couple of prelims locally. The first test was a bit of a car crash. He didn't do anything wrong, but we definitely ran round to make a new land speed record and did like a 5-minute test in about 30 seconds.
Yeah, okay.
And we got 52% and came dead last out of about 8 people, which was fine because he didn't look at anything, he didn't spook, he was just very tight and very tense, bless him. And then he had a quick break on the lorry, but wasn't out for his second test, and he went and got like 68% and came third. So that kind of set the theme for a few outings of his first year dressage. Just at the first test would always be very, very, very tense and hysterical, and the second test he would calm down and remember that we're just here to go in circles. So he used to really settle in. But what I loved about him is that the worst he would do was go tense. He never did anything else. He didn't like, because he had a bit of a bump whilst he was racing, so he was quite nervous of other horses in the collecting ring. And if something approached him head on and he was against the fence line, if I wasn't quick enough to circle away, then he would sometimes spin round. But it would be something, that was genuine fear rather than trying to have you off. He's probably the only horse I've ever sat on that I've never worried about anything, because he can get seriously bouncy and excited when he goes out on grass, but he just doesn't have it in his nature to be nasty or silly. So he'll bounce around, he'll piaffe his way around a whole hack, but he will never do anything to hurt you. I think if I ever fell off him, he'd be horrified.
Isn't it funny, because I've got one that's exactly the same, that to sit on him, I think other people look at him and they're like, how are you not scared of that horse? Like, he looks like he's about to explode, but you just know he's one of those types that you can sit on and he bounces around and he's a complete jerk, really, but you just know that there's nothing else behind it, and that's all that they've got. They've just got this bounciness about them.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a relaxing hack in terms of he won't just mooch along and walk. If I take him on his own, he's a lot better, but as soon as he's in company, I think he thinks, I've got to get my nose in front here. He's still a bit competitive about it, but he's so brilliant, because my one of my good friends, who's a very novice rider, has ridden with me on a couple of tracks when I've been on my young horse, because the other horse I've got, although he's 6, he's actually only been in work for 6 months. So he's a real baby in his head. And my friend on Fig have really narrowed it, not narrowed, nannied us around a couple of hacks. And, I can just trust him that even though he might be slightly thinking about jogging sideways, he's not actually going to do anything. And he'll go over anything, through anything, under anything. He's really, really brave like that.
They're honest horses, aren't they? Yeah, very honest. So he got. So you had your prelims and you got him out, and he sort of exposed him to the world of dressage. And then from what I can see, so from 2011, like he made headway pretty quickly. So he got up to FEI fairly quickly for a horse.
Yeah, I think it was about 4 years. I think it took us to go from effectively off the track to competing at
That's
PSG.
insane. Like, that's crazy.
Actually, I had the goal sort of the end of the year before we made our PSG debut, but the changes were always a sticking point with him because although he's very correct in the contact and that he then became very even and very straight, he is a really, really, really strong horse and he would just take over. And it didn't matter whether I was asking for the 5s, the 4s, the 3s, the 2s, or then even eventually the 1s. He would kind of just throw in whatever he felt was acceptable at that stage. And if I let him do 2 lines in a PSG or whatever he thought was acceptable, I would have never had a problem. It was the fact that I then obviously had to try and correct him and get him to wait with me, that then we'd have a few blips along the way. So it took a little bit while longer than I thought it would do just to get him confident enough to wait for me in the ring. But you know, on a good day, we'd get him. On a bad day, I'd get all the wrong number of changes. But at the end of the day, it's 2 lines of scores. But unfortunately, over here, that affects your submission score as well. So I used to get a bit hammered on that. But then with him being so neat and accurate with everything else, I can make it up on like all my centre lines. His lateral work was really good. The walk pirouettes in the PSG, I find catch a lot of people out as well. And he always used to get 8s for them because he's so neat and his walk is so cute. Like he'd get really good scores for them. So we've picked the marks up everywhere else, and I think our personal best is 67 at that level, which is, you know, up there rivaling some of the purpose breads. So it was quite interesting. Sort of the places that I used to compete, you'd end up bumping into the same people, and we'd sort of always joke. I'd be like, "Oh, I'm never going to get my changes." She'd be like, "Well," she was like, "At least you can get walk," and I'd be like, "Well, I can these days," because in the very first year that I had Fig competing, he just used to jog through his walk all the time. I think I might even still have the sheet actually, but I might have retired from it, so therefore not kept it. There was one infamous test where he actually ended up cantering when he was meant to be walking. And I think we got a 0 for that movement. I've only ever got 2 noughts on it before. But yeah, we got a solid 0 for that movement. She just said, not walking next. I was like, no, that's fair enough. So it took us a while to get things like that, like the relaxation in the ring, took a while for that to come together. But again, he'd always be quite hot. If I took him for a lesson or anything, he'd always be keen, but he is just safe and sensible. So you kind of, I think as you get a bit older and you sort of realise what you want from your horse, you learn to accept that that's still their way of being perfect and not to hold it against them. So, and having then had a seriously nappy horse, I'm eternally grateful for how genuine Fig really is, like how enthusiastic he is about his work. Because I get on him and he's like, yeah, what are we doing? Whereas the other horse that I had at the same time was kind of like, I'd rather be in bed, thanks.
I think that's what I love about the thoroughbreds too, because I came through a different way, whereas I ended up with an instructor that just loved dressage. I never went to pony club or did anything like that. I literally just started in a stable where all we did was dressage, and we loved dressage, but she obviously had the purpose bred warm blood, so I rode a lot of warm bloods and everything was an effort. And then the first horse I bought, obviously I couldn't afford a warm blood, so I ended up with an off the track thoroughbred, and I just had this like little fireball underneath me that just wanted to do everything all at once, and by this stage I had no idea how to ride it because I was so used to these warm bloods. And that was a steep learning curve of just like, oh my god, there's so much happening all at once. But then once you know them, they are so genuine and so like they've got the best work ethics of any breed. That's what I fell in love with the thoroughbred. So with Figs, going from prelim to pre-St. George and then into 2, like was it just a natural progression that he just kept sort of improving and you just bump him up the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I am a firm believer that the horse should be ideally, you know, not solidly training, but at least touching on the stuff that you need 2 levels above, because that's then what really shows up the weaker areas of what level you're competing. So I remember if he started competing in May, we qualified for what we call the summer regional championships. So now our dressage year is split 2 ways into a winter and a summer season, and it's quite a prestigious event. It's more aimed at professional amateurs and the professionals themselves. and it was his 8th show. It was a disaster, I'll say, and it was a very humbling day. He warmed up perfectly and then completely lost his head in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And we came last out of 32 people. It might have been 35 people, but somewhere around 30 people with like 52%. And he cantered when he was meant to be trotting, and he ran off with me, and we just didn't do very well. We still got a nice picture,
Mm-hmm.
and I still didn't fall off, so it was still a successful day.
Yes.
But it's always what I quote to people, you know, when they say, "Oh, you made it look so easy on FIG," and I'm like, "Oh, it was not easy all the time. Trust me." Like, I remember our first few competitions, but even when he was doing that, which was a prelim championship, he was still already at home starting to play a little bit with half pass and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had the benefit in his age that he was physically mature.
Yeah.
So it's not like where you have a very young horse and then you're rushing them before they're physically ready. So he had the strength there in his frame, basically. And touching on all of that kind of work really helped him release the softness that was needed for the work that he actually was going to do in the ring.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like, we'd be warming up and like leg yield and stuff like that. That was just like a very commonly used thing for him to try and get him to listen and wait for me.
Mm-hmm.
So realistically, sort of by the end of the year, we moved up to novice, then we did an elementary before the end of the year was out. And then the next year we moved to medium and did an advanced medium, which is where you have like your half pass with a single flying change in. We moved to that before the end of the following year. And it was always with a pinch of salt, because it was like it might not go the way I want it to. And to be fair to Fig, he always debuted at every level really well.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was almost like I'd taken by surprise. And then he must sat in bed at night reading the test, because I'd go and do it again like a couple of weeks later, and he'd be like, "I'm going to take over because I know exactly what we're doing and where we're going," which is sort of a problem. I could never practice whole tests anywhere, because as soon as I did, it was like it was ingrained in his mind, and as soon as I turned one corner, he'd be like, "I'm going," because in the inter one, like, all your changes are broken up with other stuff. So from memory, you'll do like a line of changes, then you'll do your extended canter into your pirouettes, and then your other line of changes, or something similar to that. I've not ridden into one for a while now. And he would just come around every corner and be like, "Oh, we're doing our extended canter," and I'd be like, "No, we're doing our pirouettes now." And as soon as then I bring it back, he'd be like, "Oh, right, okay," and then I'm just going to take over. We'll do a pirouette in about 3 steps. So again, it was a challenge at every level to remind him that I was actually in charge. But yeah, he just kept on going. And I mean, I still remember that first prelim outing on him like it was yesterday. Like, there's plenty of shows that I'm sure I've forgotten, but I still really vividly remember that one. And I remember at the time being like, "Yes, we've done it. Like, he's out and he's getting good scores at prelim and I'm on top of the world." And then he went and like did his first novice, and I had the same feeling. And I was like, "Oh my God," I was like, "I can go and do an elementary on this course now." And then I was like, "Oh, we're doing a medium." Then I was like, "Oh my God, we're at advanced medium now."
Yeah.
And then before I knew it, I was like, "Wow, we've done an advanced." And I remember there was a few people along the way whose opinion probably wasn't favourable for various reasons, but there are a few people on the way who sort of chose to voice the opinion that maybe he wasn't going to go as far as I like to think, as I sort of dared to think that he might do. And it was quite satisfying to be like, actually, he's done it. He's done it, and he's done it really well. So yeah, he kind of, I always refused to sort of put a limit on him, because then I felt like that stopped me from thinking in my head that we could definitely do it.
Yeah.
So it was always, it will be what will be, and we'll see where it takes us, because even to get him to advanced medium successfully, and like he was winning at that stage, you know, high 60s, he got a couple of 70s at advanced medium, and you know, he was going to all his regional championships and everything, so even by then he had exceeded my expectations, because I remember when I got back into riding and I first started competing again, I thought, "Oh my God, like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't know what I'm doing." And that's kind of one thing I wish, if I could do anything, I wish I could know what I know now and then have FIG again, because I feel like I could make it like so much better.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's my grounding horse. So yeah.
So that's amazing that I guess he just kept giving you that feeling that you could just keep pushing him at the grades. Was there anything I guess the challenges along the way with an off the track that maybe you wouldn't have with another horse that you were faced with, or he just kept ticking along?
Yeah. I mean, he sort of kept trucking along. I mean, one thing that took us both by surprise, because he's really, I say both, me and my sister, because we were based here together for quite some time. She's since moved away with her partner, but a couple of hours away. But we sort of used to like work as a team with the horses. So we'd ssort of like, she'd help me with him and like give me some insight, that kind of thing. But one thing that really took us by surprise was his talent for Piaffe. He's really compact as a horse,
yes,
and he's got a really good hind leg. And to teach him Piaffe, all we did one day is literally stand next to him, point with a whip and click, and it was sort of cemented a couple of weeks later. And it's probably the best Piaffe that I will have ever sat on in my entire life.
Yeah.
He's just incredible at it. The only problem then was that he would do it all the time, everywhere, when he wasn't meant to be doing it.
Yep.
It became a new party piece, and I mean, it's also the reason that we taught him the flying changes so early on, because he was so clever. He was like, no, I'm on the wrong leg. I changed the right one. And I was like, no, you're meant to be doing counter. So that's also the wrong thing. But you can't tell them off. So I would definitely say he's of the more hysterical ex-racer nature. He panics about doing the wrong thing before he's done anything.
Yes.
So there was a lot of times where I was kind of just piloting him around, very gently patting with one hand, unable to put my leg on at all, because he was just so hot about it.
Yeah.
And I think it took me quite a while to really have the guts to put my leg on and be like, no, we are going to do this, because the more energy he had in his performance, the easier it all came together, especially for the higher level stuff. But like on my other horse, even if he's really hot, he will still do a great 4-beat walk, and it's lovely, and he'll get 8s. Fig has got a great walk that also scores 8s, but when he's the slightest bit tense, it's like a lateral sewing machine. So he immediately drops to like a 3 and a 4, and it's so easy to then lose those scores on stuff like that, where they kind of chomp at the bit and they're really rigid in their neck. Whereas my other horse, he'll just drop straight out of trot into walk and do a lovely relaxed free walk. And I think, it took me quite a while to achieve that with Fig. I would definitely say as well, sort of the bigger shows that we did, where there's like a tannoy system and banners and flags and multiple arenas, that kind of thing. Especially where we're staying overnight, it took me a long time to find a way to work with him to still get the best from him. And what I did for quite a while is I would get to a show, like being early for horse shows is probably the only thing that I'm early for. My friends kind of joke that I run on my own time system and that I'm late for everything, which isn't true. I am mostly on time for things, but horse shows, I'm like a good hour earlier than I need to be. And what I used to do is I get him there, I get him off, and again, because I can trust him not to do anything stupid, I get straight on and I literally stretch him for like 10 minutes in the warm-up, untack him, put him back on the lorry and leave him alone for 30 minutes. And he'd be like, it almost seemed to sink into his head, oh yeah, I'm just here to do the whole dressage thing. I'm not here to race. I'm not here to go fast. I can just chill out. Getting him to eat at shows as well was an absolute nightmare. He wouldn't drink, he wouldn't eat. He just constantly pull the lorry. I ended up having to hobble him because he puts back feet through the cab of my lorry, just in pure impatience of what we were doing, where we were going, and why aren't we doing it yet. So it took a long time to figure out how to just get him to relax and enjoy it, really. Because it was always that thing of like, just enjoy it. You're here to like do your thing and show people how cool you are, not like just chill.
So tension, I guess. So your number one challenge with him was tension. And I guess with thoroughbreds, they do everything at 1,000,000 miles an hour. So even in the mounting yard, they're walking. The jockey gets legged on, they're walking. Like they're always busy doing something. So it was just getting rid of that tension in him that you found the hardest. Yeah. And once I got sort of even a little bit under the skin with that, everything was so much easier with him. I remember the sort of the real breakthrough, because he didn't start doing dressage to music until like he was already out of PSG, I think, by the time I dipped my toe in, because it's quite a lot, especially if you've got like a full-time Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job. It's quite a lot to fit in, the music and then the training for everything else. And I had another horse on the go at that time, so
it was a lot to fit in, so I quickly put together an advanced medium dressage to music routine. And I remember like the early days when he'd ever hear anything on the tannoy, and I'd say he'd lose his marbles, but again, we'd just have, like lateral walking and definitely above it. But then he suddenly seemed to really relax and really enjoy it. And it was almost like he would walk into a ring, and if you told him, like I used to like whisper in his ear, I was like, "You're the best horse here. You're going to win. Don't worry." Because I think that's a big thing with riders as well. They go in and they worry that they're already not going to do their best. And I'm like, I am going to do my best. I'm going to win this.
Yep.
Even if there's somebody on like £100,000 warm blood over here that can do everything with his eyes shut. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to win this. My horse is better than yours.
Yes.
And he really liked to be told that he was the best horse. And he always will be. He's like the king on the yard, and he absolutely knows it.
Yeah.
So. Not that he even likes the horses as well. That's a hilarious thing. He doesn't like being left alone, but if you bring another horse near him, he absolutely hates it. So
it's hilarious though, that mindset, because as a young rider, I started off on a leopard print Appaloosa, I think like a Dalmatian basically, and I used to take him out to dressage, and I thought in my eyes he was the most beautiful horse in the world. He had no tail, and he had that real pink appy eye, so his eyes were pink, his muzzle was pink. Like in hindsight, he was not beautiful, but I thought he was the best horse in the world. And I would go out and do my dressage test, and I'd be like, he's the greatest horse in the world. Why wouldn't everyone love him? And he would do really well for me. I think maybe because I had that mindset of I was riding the best horse in the world. And it's funny because I was talking to Steph Hahn, who's a eventer down here in Australia that's doing quite well. Like she's sort of doing 4-star. She's got her off the track up quite high. And she was saying that she always found dressage hard with her off the track because she was competing with all these warm bloods that just naturally had that movement. And although he was lovely, he just didn't have that natural elasticity in his movement. And so she really worked on the, if you're accurate, they can't take marks off you. So everything she did was she's like, be the professional, be accurate. And she would end up scoring higher than these other horses because of that. And then through training a horse that had developed a bit more cadence, and it was really interesting. So
I mean that's what I always say to people who ask me like what like how did you get fit to sort of look the way he did, and I think what they mean is how did you change the shape of his body so much, like how did you put that amount of bulk on him? And it really is once you start playing with your working pirouettes and then moving towards your full pirouettes, and you start playing with the PF and the passage work, their body just takes on this whole different shape, and they're suddenly, most horses, not all of them, but most horses just stack it on. And I mean realistically, Fig didn't have an extension in his trot until he could passage, and obviously his passage for him was like probably a 2 out of 10 for every warm blood on the circuit at the same level. But he was trying his hardest, and because he learned that there was another gear in that trot and how to bring his knees up and sit a little bit, it meant that everything else came together. And obviously what you then learn as you're in that position as a rider, it helps you link together, like even your basic transitions become better and more fluent for that little bit of elevation. And like now he's got an absolutely incredible medium and extended trot, and some judges love it and some judges hate it, but that's sort of the irony in dressage, in that you're purely being subjected to somebody else's personal view. Despite the scales of training, it is what the other person thinks, so who's holding the pan. But yeah, I mean, his body really changed when I started doing that kind of work with him. Definitely.
Absolutely. And I mean, so he had about, I think, 28 starts, and he's raced not only in Australia but Japan as well. So he's sort of sightseed the world as well. And I guess the other thing is, I mean, he's jumped, he's gone over hurdles. Did you ever have any soundness issues with him after all the work he'd done in his previous career?
No, not at all. I mean, he's probably the soundest horse that I've ever, and I probably will ever have. He's a real trooper. He is very prone to things like lymphangitis and cellulitis. So he knocks his leg and the whole thing blows up, and he really struggles with that. I had a bit of a worry with colic with him for a while, but I treated him for hindgut acidosis with sulcrafate. Never looked back.
Okay.
Never ever looked back. It got to the point where he hadn't eaten anything, like we're talking like no hay or anything, in about a week.
Wow.
And my vet was really concerned. And he had known Fig from the start as well. And he was like, this horse is so hysterical. He was like, I don't want to scope him. I just want to give him something. I just want to try him on some medication to try and get him to eat something. And as soon as, literally, we're talking 24 hours, different horse. And I think obviously his stressy, hysterical nature kind of lends itself to having a sore stomach. So I've always kept him on. I think it works out about 10 milligrams of sucralfate a day. And then when we were competing or traveling or staying anywhere else, I'd double up the dose. And that is obviously quite expensive, but horses are. But yeah, so that really worked for him. And again, sort of in terms of diet and everything, because you think ex-racer, you want them on fibre and oil, you don't want them on anything energy. Well, Fig actually works best on a full cereal diet. I really believe there's a feed called Haven Slobber Mash, and the feed label is like terrifying, but it's heat treated, so it's very safe for them, and I feed my other horse on it as well. And he honestly, it was the calmest he's ever been when he had like a full stomach of cereals, and just the condition that he put on when he was finally eating something that he enjoyed was just different. I mean, he had a bit of a bobble. Where are we now? We're 2020. He had a bit of a bobble a couple of years ago, which is when I was starting to really push the Grand Prix stuff at home. And he developed a left foot. It wasn't lameness, but he was definitely in level. So I took him for like a full workup, thinking, oh God, they're going to tell me something horrific. And it's just where he had a little arthritis in his hocks developing, as you would expect for like a mid-teens ex-racer who's done 8 years of racing. So we injected those, treated those, never looked back. He unfortunately came down with laminitis in December. So the poor baby is just starting to go out on a little bit of restricted grass every day. But other than that, he has never given me any problems, you know, like his feet are really good. And he's got the tiniest little stick legs ever, you know, like they're so thin, they're like my wrists. And you look at them, like, especially when we're hacking and like we canter all sorts, and I'm thinking, like, I'm so lucky I've got a horse that can just do this, that doesn't just drop to pieces. But I mean, in that respect, I've been quite lucky. I just tend to choose quite quirky horses one way or another. So I guess that's my karma. Choose a really sound horse. Actually, my thing that I tend to choose, I choose horses with really bad teeth. That seems to be my thing. My dentist basically wants to wring my neck every time I introduce another horse to him, because he's like, oh God, what's wrong with this one? Got quite it's not too severe, but it's quite a noticeable parrot mouth, which has taken some treatment to get him right. But he's always been, I think, because he was at the stage of being sort of a more mature horse, that thing was normal, rather than he didn't develop any problems with it. So it looks a bit funny sort of when you look at it, but actually he works fine and the contact is great. But yeah, I've got a bit of a thing for horses with really awful teeth. Good legs, must be brown, must be a boy, and awful teeth is basically my stats. So yeah, if they've got a nice mane and tail as well, that's a winner. Can't resist a good set of hair.
Because the other thing I noticed looking through all your videos as well is that you kept him in a snaffle for quite a while, like going up the grades.
So he where he is so strong, it took again quite a bit of sort of thinking outside the box as to what I could use on him that's within the rules, because I don't believe in strong bitting or anything like that, and he won't stand for a tight noseband, and that goes against all my ethics anyway. So it took quite a lot of figuring out as to what I can use on him, and for quite a while he was okay in a double. But obviously the thing with horses is that when you change part of their routine or part of their training, you ask them a different question, they respond differently, and suddenly their needs are different from what they were even a month ago, and you just kind of have to go with that. So he was in a double for a few years at medium and advanced medium, and then I think he did his first season at like advanced PSG in a double, and then again, the more that I touched on like the PF Passage and the ones, the easier I found him to ride in a snaffle. So he was strong, sure, but I could keep him straighter. Because what he does when he gets strong is he really curls over, and in a double he just ducks away from the curb. Even if I don't hold the rein, he just ducks right down into his chest. And when you've got a horse that wants to run away from you and you've got nothing in front of you, it's really, really hard to sort of sit that out. So I put him back in his snaffle, and he was so much happier. And I had quite a lot of support from a friend who runs a tack shop, and I tried the what's it called? The Steuben Freedom Bridle. They're a really, really strange looking piece of kicks. They've got a really cut back headpiece that's got like a big gap in the middle for their pole, and like sort of muscle structure behind their ears. But he really liked it, and from then on I then rode him in just the normal snaffle, like an anatomical headpiece, and then I moved to a grackle on a recommendation from my horse's dentist, and that was what he found best. So we've been through numerous bits, and his thing is definitely like a loose ring snaffle of some kind. But he's taught me a lot about stuff like that, because again, on paper people will be like, try this, it's perfect for horses that set their jaw and they run a bit. Try it on him, absolutely hates it. So it will tend to be something that isn't necessarily what you might expect to have him in. I've got him in the Novo Contact double joint loose ring snaffle at the moment, which he really likes, and he might change his mind when he's back in work and decide that he wants something else. But I'll see how he feels when the time comes.
So that's one thing I've really loved about listening to you and what you do with him, is that you take quite a natural approach with them, which is something that's a little bit different. Having them barefoot and just working with them and working out what they're comfortable in, I think is great, and sort of write down what I do with my own horses. So it's really nice to hear that you can do that and still be so successful and get them to FEI. So and
I think as well, a lot, I find it frustrating sometimes. Like, I mean, I try not to spend too much time on social media otherwise, because I think there's a lot of information out there, but I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and people that are either not confident enough in their skill set or not confident enough in their gut instincts take the wrong road. And it's, it might not be something that's going to have a drastic consequence. It might not hurt anyone, or it might not hurt the horse, but it's not going to produce the right result. And I think people are so then completely dog set on following what a professional has said that they forget about what they're feeling and what's in front of them. And it takes quite a lot to sit back and say, actually, no, you know what, this doesn't feel right. I mean, I was talking about a friend to this the other day, like when I have a lesson, because I train with Sophie Wells, and she is so realistic, she's so down to earth. She won't tell me something looks good until it does look good, which I really appreciate. I don't like hot air, I don't like smoke at my bum, so I appreciate being told when something's good, and also how to make it better if it's not as good. And she might ask me to do an exercise, and I ride through it, and sort of the result that I then am faced with, I'll be like, I don't think this is quite working. This isn't right for him, or am I misunderstanding it? And we'll kind of talk about it. Whereas a lot of people might think, well, that's what I've been told to do, so I will just get on with it. And it's not always as easy as that. I mean, I'm quite sort of outspoken in my view of most things in life anyway. And sort of, I'm very forthcoming when I'm not comfortable with something. I had a lesson with someone, we're talking years ago now, and they had me halt rein back into median canter. And that's great if you've got a horse that needs to go, but on Fig, he doesn't need to go at all. And so all I ended up with was something that was running really long and really flat and getting progressively more heavy. And because I think he knew that it wasn't right, he was getting more wound up as well. And I said to this person, I was like, this isn't working. And I was really talked down to, as in like, well, I'm the professional, this is what I told you to do. And that, even at that, I thought in my head, I was like, well, I'm just going to stick with my gut instinct, because I know my horse better than whoever is teaching me. I may not have more dressage knowledge, but I know my horse better than this other person. So I'm going to go with what I feel. But I mean, again, like with my comment about knowing what I know now, I know so much about all the little things that come together, because it's almost like, it's like having a baby horse, but a bit quicker with a massive quirk. Because again, physically he's already there, so I don't have to worry that I'm pushing him before he's ready. But like one day you're like, oh my God, we can only canter on one leg, and the other reign we're disunited all the time.
Yeah.
And then a month later you're like, hey, we can get canter both ways and we're on the bit, good to go. And then you're like a year later, you're like, oh my God, we're doing flying changes in both directions.
Yeah.
Like it's really strange how quickly it comes together.
Yes.
And so like I had my horse, I actually ended up selling him because he wasn't sort of had the right mindset for the job, and he was a warm blood. But I backed him and then produced him up to a 5-year-old. And I remember when I got on him and he was walking beautifully, trotting beautifully, cantering. It was like a llama on crack. Like he was so gorgeous and had such a nice rhythm, but his head was like up in the air somewhere. Yeah. And I used to I record my sessions on my phone. I just leave my phone on the side, and I watched it back and I was like, I am never going to get to a show on this horse. And even a week later, I was like, hey, we're on the bit now. Yeah. So it's almost like, don't panic and just enjoy the journey. I think, especially in my first few years with FEI, I spent a lot of time worrying what other people might be thinking about what I was doing, especially when it's not going right and you're out in public and you're trying to make it better.
Yeah.
I used to that somebody would be watching thinking, does she think that looks good? And in my head, I'd be like, I'm just trying to get him to go on the bit. So, you just have to kind of get in your own zone and forget what other people think, because what other people think isn't actually important. Yeah. You go out, enjoy your horse, and you have a good time. And the moment that I stopped stressing about that, it was just so much easier, because then you can really celebrate the horse as they are. Yeah. I think that's when I really started to appreciate FEI. Is when I was like, you know what, he's actually gone out and he's given his 100% for this test. So the fact that the judge didn't really like it, I'm not too bothered about. Nothing bad is going to happen to anyone because we had a bit of a rubbish day. Yeah. Like, I think it's easier as an amateur to say this when I don't do this for a job as well, when I've not got the stress of owners or sponsors or things like that. I am doing it purely for myself. So I need to have a bit of a reality check with myself occasionally and be like, you remember why you're doing this, because it's fun. Yeah. And the moment that it stops being fun is when you need to evaluate why it's not fun. Yep. And I think for me that was quite a sort of a big thing to sort of identify why it wasn't fun. And it was because I was just putting a lot of stress on myself. Quite frankly. Yeah. So lesson learned, basically.
It's funny because you touched on something that I find quite a lot as well, in that a lot of these dressage coaches that you go to, they're so used to seeing warm bloods, and then you throw a thoroughbred in the mix and they try and use the same formula on a thoroughbred, it's put leg on, half hold. And it's like, well, if I put leg on and hold my rein, I'm going to end up with something fairly explosive here, and I'm probably going to fall off. So, and it's,
and they're like, add a bit more leg, and I'm like, we're going to gallop in a second.
Yeah, it's like, you don't understand what leg means here.
I mean, I'm fortunate. I've had, because obviously, I think when I started out with FEI, X Racehorse was starting to gain a little bit of momentum as not even necessarily dressage, but like a good all-round horse. A horse that is worthwhile investing your time and your energy into training to be better. Because that's, for me, that's what dressage is. You make the horse the best it can be. Yeah, if the horse is best, it's 55% at elementary, then that's fine. That's the best for that horse. But if it's 55% at Grand Prix, then great, brilliant. You've gone out and done it, and no one else has on that horse. But I had quite a lot of support from the beginning. I initially started training with a guy called Harry Payne, who he's based up in Scotland now, but he's really good with X races, really sympathetic, and he's a judge as well, so he could kind of give you that viewpoint. And then I trained quite a lot with a lady called Steph Croxford, and she does international dressage on they're like draft cross, like I forget what Mr. Hyde is, like Gelderlander type horses. Okay. I think I might be slightly off with the breed there, don't quote me on that. But she has a really good eye for getting the softness and the suppleness that a horse not bred for dressage might need a little bit of help with. So she was always sort of very honest and open, and she'd be like, no, that's awful, go and do it again, or that was great, well done. So which is an approach that I like. I can't deal with somebody telling me that something's great, because I want to make it better. So if you go away thinking that it's all peachy and then you go to a show and it's awful, then somebody's telling you the wrong thing somewhere. And then I actually won a lesson with Sophie Wells, and I won that by posting. She did a competition on Facebook, like show me like a transformation image of your horse, and obviously the the first few ridden pictures I've got of Fig, they were brilliant for him at the time. I was like, oh, look how nice he is into the hand. And obviously you compare it to what he is now, and you're like, yeah, that horse is very on its head, and he's very tight, and he's very underweight. But that's what he was at the time.
Yeah.
And it's so important. That's why I love photos of them, because it's so important to have that, again, as a reality check when everything might be going wrong and you think, oh God, we're not achieving anything. Well, actually, look at how amazing your horse is, and you've done that. And then I posted a picture of Fig at the beginning versus what he looked like at that time, which was, I think, about 3 years ago now. And so I won the lesson and sort of never looked back from training with her. And yeah, she's great, because I had sort of had a few lessons with other various people along the way. And when I sort of mentioned maybe my end goal would be, to do PSG upwards with this horse, there were a couple of people that kind of were, really? Are you serious about that? Like, this is a thoroughbred. And I was like, I'm not looking to go and get 80% at Olympia. Yeah. I'm looking to go and achieve the movements in a test environment. And you have to be realistic about that, because they aren't born with the same movement as a Warmblood. If they were, then everybody would be riding them. Yeah. And they're not. But equally, they're not everyone's cup of tea. So I felt a bit belittled at time, I guess. But it's important to then continue having that faith in that horse. He was sound, he was fit, he was healthy, and he wanted to do the job. And there are so many horses that are sound, fit, and healthy, and don't want to do the job. And I've had one of those. So it's really important to sort of pick up on that enthusiasm from the horse. And when I told Sophie, I was like, I'd love to get up to those levels with him. She was like, right, let's get started. Like, no joking around, no messing around. Just like, let's make this horse better, and let's make you a better rider. Which was just awesome. Like, I can't thank her enough for her help, because I know that she's always at the end of a text as well. Like, even if I'm having a little wobble, she'd be like, pack it in, all your socks, get on with it, you can do it. So no, she's great, really great.
Yeah, and it's funny because that's how I came across you, actually, was just on Facebook, on social media, and it was just a post of like a before and after, and it was Fig in his prelim test and then at Inter 2. And and when you said he was an ex-racehorse and off the tracker, I immediately just thought, I need to talk to this person, because you're exactly the type of person that I want to talk to and talk about off-the-track thoroughbreds with, and what they can do, and that it may not be at the same level as these purpose-bred horses, but they can still do it. And that they're, what they lack, they make up in so many other areas, like their temperament and the trainability and work ethic. And he's proven that tenfold. So I saw recently he's retired now. So what do his days look like now?
So his days at the moment, he is, the funny thing is with him being on box rest for laminitis is that he actually hates turnout.
Okay.
He fence walks, calls, he digs the ground up. He doesn't really eat. He does anything except eat, actually. And he always comes in looking a little bit tired and a little bit run down, because all he's been doing is running around all day, screaming his head off. We joke that he's a mare in a gelding's body. And actually his nickname, his most favoured nickname, is Mariah Carey, because he's like allergic to other horses. He just doesn't like them at all. God forbid he can't see what all the other horses on the yard are doing at that moment in time. I can hear him now. He's just screaming his head off. When I go out, he's just standing over his door looking chilled as anything. So he's starting to go out for, I think he's out for about an hour and a half, sort of split over 3 times. Sort of with the whole lockdown thing, I'm working from home at the moment. So that gives me sort of the freedom to do that. But he has got imprint shoes on both front feet and touch all the wood ever. He's looking like he's making a really good recovery. As a horse, he owes me absolutely nothing. And if I was told that I couldn't ride him ever again, I'm quite happy as long as I've still got him. But there's every chance that he's going to come back into doing, I say low level, it will be probably elementary, so just starting like lateral work and a couple of changes, because again, he's gone in the ring and he's proved that he can do it. So I've no need to sort of go and train him effectively. It's exercise to stop him from getting too porky, which is something that I never thought I'd have to control with him. I have to admit, I thought I'd never ever have to cut this horse's feed down. And as soon as he was on box rest, despite the fact that because it was laminitis, he was on nothing for except soaked hay for a couple of weeks, he just ballooned. And I kind of looked at him and I was like, yep, you need another feed cut down. And he has lost a bit more weight, which it kind of destroys me a little bit inside, because I spent so long building that frame on him. But he's at a different stage now, so it's important to keep him healthy. So and what I love about him, because he's so genuine. I mean, there's a few people that have ridden him otherwise than me. I mean, Sophie loves him because he's so buzzy and he's so enthusiastic.
Yeah.
But he is really sharp, and if you're not okay with how reactive he is, it goes quite badly wrong quite quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm quite fortunate that he's so good with like the piaffe passage work that he's actually let a couple of my friends ride him, some of which are very, very novice-y, and some of which are almost at that same stage as me in their dressage career, where they're like touching on the Grand Prix stuff, and to show them what a true like piaffe feels like is something that a lot of them probably won't experience otherwise.
Yeah.
And I can trust him, and as soon as I just point a whip at him, or I'm like, can you just click under your breath and tap alternately, he just sits and he just does it. And it's just so nice for him to give that back to other people. So he's like almost like my little schoolmaster now. But he is so temperamental with it, that I don't let just anybody get on him, because that would probably end quite badly. There was a infamous situation with one of my very, very good friends, and she's got her own homebred horse who's part cob, and then he's out of Johnson. And he's seriously quirky, but he's a little bit backwards quirky, but he is very sharp. And my friend got on Fig after I'd stretched him, and he felt great. You know, in my head I was like, oh, he's going to do me justice. He feels really soft and really relaxed. My friend got on him, walked him around for a few minutes, asked for trough, got canter on the wrong leg, and just got run off with for about 10 minutes straight. And I kind of yelled out, I was like, can you stop? And she was like, I don't think so. And I was like, oh dear God. I was like, please just don't point at the fence, otherwise he will just go over it, because he really loves his jumping as well.
Yeah, that's it.
She managed to stop and got off, and she was like, I don't think he likes me. I was like, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think he likes you either. So we kind of laugh about it now, but yeah, he definitely has people that he will accept and people that he doesn't. But I think it's probably, I think my friend is obviously used to defensively riding her horse, which is something that my previous warm blood sort of ingrained in me a little bit. They teach you to ride a certain way. So I think when he went to react, she possibly held on to it or something like that. But no blood lost, so it was okay. We lived to tell the tale, but I don't think we'll approach that one again. So his days really, I've got 3 at home at the moment. I've got my 6-year-old warm blood, Rooney. And then I've got Fig, who's 16 now. We've also got it's my mum's old horse. He's 26. And he's not ridden in a little while, because he is starting to look his age. Although I say that, he went cantering off around across the field this morning, so he looks about 12 apparently. But he did a little bit of hacking with me and my friend, because he's, you know, you could literally land like a plane next to him and he wouldn't react. He's so safe and sensible. So he's really good at like sort of nannying me on the roads, because my warm blood is not good in traffic at all. So, I mean, realistically, sort of over the next few years, I imagine as nature takes its course, we will probably lose the older horse, Bruce. We'll probably lose him, and then Fig will take his place as like a yard nanny. And again, he's under no pressure to ever do anything again. I'd love to have him back. Sort of by the end of the year, I'd love to have him back in like full hacking work. Because I've sort of been discussing some different shoe options. I'd love to have him barefoot. But what I found with, particularly when I got to Inter 1, he doesn't grow a lot of foot down. His toe grows out. But it then left me, because I trimmed them myself, and it left me quite limited in that I could only take the toe back, but he just wasn't growing any depth to his foot. So he used to bruise really easily. So then he was having like a week off here, a week off there. And of course, where he's so prone to lymphangitis, where he was standing in a stable, he just gets swollen legs. So I ended up having him shot in front, which was a lifesaver at the time because it solved that problem. But then the shoeing by that farrier in particular was not successful towards the end, let's say, and his feet were then in quite bad shape. Sort of like is partly what prompted the problems that I'm having now. But I've got a brilliant farrier who's quite confident that I could either, by the end of the year, like boost him up for some shoes, or we could carry on with the slightly harder composite of the imprint shoe, which is just tougher, and it means it's like an all-terrain plastic shoe, because that seems to really be working for his feet. Like he's got his concavity back in his soles now, and they're looking really good. Like the sort of like the dead horn and the affected laminate is almost grown out now. So touch wood, he'll be sort of back in action sort of over the next couple of months, because again, as a horse that I've never fallen off and a horse that I consider very safe, even if he is very sparky.
Yeah.
I led him out in hand the other day, and it was leading like a 2-year-old stallion. He stood up and he boxed, and obviously nowhere near me because he's very, very spatially aware as a horse.
Yep.
And he was absolutely beside himself. And I was like, Fig, you're 16. We're going for a walk in the school. Can you just chill out? And he was like snorting and beside him. So it looks very sound. He looks absolutely cracking.
Yes.
I was like, please, can we just walk? So really it's just a case of seeing how he carries on. But he's under no pressure. Somebody asked me if I was going to ride him soon, and I kind of thought, I think I'm going to need to do a bit more in-hand work before I want to get back on him. Otherwise I might get on him and he'll just shoot off. I mean, we had a bit of problems with saddles in the early days because obviously I'm of quite a petite frame, and the tree in my my saddle at the time managed to break 3 times in a row.
How?
It was only, I don't know, I must be made of lead or something. But I would obviously, I'd jump him at home in him, but it'd only be me riding him. It's stored properly. It'd only go on him as well. And he just started acting really off and really throwing me in like the half-past work. So I had it checked out. My saddler pretty much picked it up, stretched it, and was like, yeah, your tree's broken.
Wow.
And at one point, that left us without a saddle for about a month whilst it had to go back to Italy.
Yeah.
Now, I had hire. There's a college literally just up the road, and they've got this amazing indoor that you can hire out.
Yep.
And so I went with my sister on her 4-year-old freshly backed warm blood at the time, a friend on their, no joke, they're absolutely insanely tall horse who I think was 5 and very, very green with it. But there I am on Fig without a saddle, just like bobbing around, having loads of fun. And I had to get on him from like because obviously if you've not got a stirrup to help yourself up with, I had to get on him from a coffee table by the side of the ring and then ride round the audience seating to get into the arena. And Fig literally, again, like, it wasn't really our best work. We were just having a bit of fun and we just wanted to take part. But he was so cool, like literally like, yeah, whatever. And then sort of like when he started to like have some downtime out of competing, when I made the decision to retire him from competing, there's a local track near us, which is lovely. Part of it's woodland and part of it's open fields, but it's a nice country park track. Takes about an hour and 50 minutes to get around. And I go quite regularly with a friend. Yeah. And I said to her, I made a joke and I said, I bet we could ride around this bareback. And then we looked at each other and I was like, same time, next place without a saddle next weekend. So we went around bareback. This is a horse that is seriously sharp, and he's so much fun, so much fun. Aww. And again, with hacking it, like we've had like loads of really good adventures. Like I took him out to a local park that's about half an hour drive away, in the opposite direction, and we were out for about 3 hours. And he will just carry on going, like, and he's totally like water, bridges, forest, grass. He doesn't care. He'll carry on going because we were on a road. It didn't matter that it was like walking at like a million miles an hour. Yeah. So yeah, he's absolutely loving that kind of life. And I think now that he's not so finely tuned as a competition horse, I think that's what's helped him settle into the hacking. Because there's a video I did post it on the training page for the horses, but I have got it on my personal profile as well. But I went at the back of the local farm track with my sister. And you know when people are like, oh, my horse is really, really like silly to hack. Fig is in front of his pony and he's literally cantering sideways, throwing his head up. And I felt totally safe at the time. It wasn't a question of how safe I was, but it was not a relaxing ride. And it's the kind of movement that makes you need a wee in about 2 seconds flat. Yeah. So that's the kind of sharp that he is, but he won't ever do anything silly. Like, bless him, he's a good egg. So just more downtime and hopefully getting back into some work, really. But he's a good boy. That's
great. And so I've had a look, and so you've got Diamonds in the Rough Dressage, which is your Facebook page, and you've also got a YouTube channel where you just document the progress of your horses. I guess, how did that name come about, Diamonds in the Rough?
Well, so we being me and my sister again, because we run the page together. Yep. It was when we qualified both the horses in the 2012 period of competing. We qualified at novice and advanced medium respectively, both our X-races at the time. We qualified them for what you call the Winter Championships, which are at Hartbury, which is like a really, really prestigious event. And it was amazing to get to go even at that level and then consecutively at levels after that. and we were getting ready to go to this big show, and we thought, you know what, we should really document this. We should pull a page together. And the name was actually the last bit. Like we'd already written like our intro, like our About Us section. We had pictures ready, and then and somebody said to my sister, like as a passing comment, I think it was like, oh, you guys sure know how to find a diamond in the rough. And we looked at each other and we were like, that's the page name. We were like, that's got to be it. And it's a bit of a mouthful. You can shorten it. Like we usually, between us, we just refer to it as diamonds. But yeah, it is about that, because I love looking at all these amazing horses, and that includes like show jumpers and eventers, and also race horses and show horses, like all horses that are at the top of their game and are perceived to be of a high value. But the number of people that can ever afford to buy one of these horses is actually very limited. So you need to think outside the box. Like Fig cost me, and I'm always very open about how much he cost me. He cost me £1,100, and that included £100 of livery. So he effectively cost me £1,000.
Wow.
And he's got me to places that, you know, people on purpose breds will never, for various reasons. So for absolutely various reasons, you know, soundness, your own career, your lifestyle, all that kind of stuff, and will possibly never reach that level. For all those kind of reasons, and this little horse that cost me £1,000, that's not bred for it, has gone and done it. And you know, he is exactly what the name of the page is. He is a diamond in the rough, because when you look at him in his first pictures, I mean, I've got, annoyingly, my computer like completely crashed on me a couple of years ago, so I lost them, but I have got them on Facebook somewhere. I've got a picture of him clipped out, like when he came out of racing, and although he's a very handsome horse, he's very easy on the eyes, he's very run down, he's lean, his coat isn't good. And you kind of look at him, and then you look at him even now, and you think, how on earth is that the same horse? And I absolutely love watching their bodies change. Like I love a bargain, and I love like sort of the results of working hard. So even my second horse I then ended up selling, he was a very, very quirky warm bird. He was... So when I went to see him, he was about 14 hand high on his bum. And then when I went to go and pick him up a couple of months later, he was about 16 hand high on his bum, with his wither like down here somewhere. And they promised me that he was only ever going to grow to 16 hands. And I last measured him at like 16.3 as a 4-year-old. And it was definitely taller than that when I sold him as a 5-year-old. But even he went from being, you know, this skinny, scrawny goat with no neck to being a beautiful, polished, muscled, gorgeous looking creature. And I love the fact that obviously I got a bit of a bargain with him, because he wasn't backed or anything. He was 2. It was almost in his 3-year-old year. He needed a lot of work. And you know, I love that aspect of it. That's what does it for me. I love almost being the underdog. I have the advantage with my other horse now that he's a warm blood. Obviously, he finds the work easier. He's bred to find it easier. But the amount of times that I sit on him and I think, oh my God, if I could just transplant Fig's brain into your little pea head, that would be amazing. Because you get on Fig and you could be like, Fig, we're going to go and jump through that ring of fire. And he'd be like, okay, I'm not sure about that. I'll give it a go. You say that to any other horse, they'd be like, no thanks, I want to go back to bed. He's just always digs that degree deeper than you'd ever think that he would do. He tends to make mistakes because he tries too hard rather than because he can't be bothered, or because he doesn't understand something. And that's what I love about him. But yeah, my other my warm blood that I've got at the moment has been a bit of a project as well, because he was only gelded last year. So he's got quite a lot of attitude. He's got a really full-on pig eye as well. So even though he's got a very nice nature, he's got this rolling white all the time that makes him look like he's up to no good. And like even he obviously at the age that he was, he had like no top line or anything. So he's taken quite a lot of work. And even now, you know, 6 months on, he looks like a different animal. And it makes me think like how different Fig looks now compared to how he did. I'm like, well, oh my God, like how is this horse going to look in that same amount of time? So yeah, I really love that aspect. But I'm not made of money. I'm very fortunate in what I have and the opportunities that I've ever been given, having supportive parents who have sort of put us in a place where we can do all of this. At the end of the day, the horses come out of my pocket, so I'm not going to be buying 50 grand ready-made warm blood anytime soon. It's just not going to happen. And I think sort of spending that amount of money on a horse it probably isn't the best thing for me, because I quite frankly, I am what I am, and I don't really need that kind of horsepower. And I'd rather have something that's a little bit rough and ready and be like, you know what, we're going to show the world what we can do. That's what I really love, and I think you can do that with any horse as well. I think you can. I mean, if somebody turned around and said, "Hey, do you want to go and ride Vallegra at the weekend?" I would definitely not turn down that option. So yes, so if anybody wants to let me sit on their lovely Horford, that would be amazing. I mean, I did actually have, when I was, it was a few times with Sophie, she let me sit on her previous Olympic horse, Pinocchio.
Yeah.
So I learned the wands on Noki. And obviously he is very different from Fig. Like, he's massive for starters, and he's big and he's slow. And I still could not get my legs quick enough. I'd come around the corner, I'd be like, 1, 2, oh God, I've missed it. 1, 2, 3, oh God, I've missed it again. And he was so patient and put up with me, to the point that he would just carry on doing his wands, because he knew exactly what he was meant to be doing. And I'm there with my legs like 5 steps behind his horse and thinking, it's got a really small, really quick canter. I have no idea how I'm ever going to move that quickly. But we got it. We got it to the point where we were doing 6 or 7 in a row.
Yeah.
So, you know, never say never.
I
mean, again, like, along the way, there were a couple of people that said, like, this horse will never be a PSU horse. And then when I got there, they were like, oh, well, he's probably never going to get it into one. I was like, well, I'm going to do one of those in a couple of weeks, so watch this space. So it was always a bit of a fine balance between being fair on the horse, while still sort of realising your dream. Because actually with him, with Fig, the Inter One suited him better as a test than the PSGF did. We obviously didn't have the opportunity to pick up marks on things like the Wall Pirouette, but the Inter One's got a rein back in it, which he always used to get an 8 or a 9 for, because he's very neat. That's one thing that I always notice. A lot of horses, once they get to that level, they struggle with putting together the things that we consider easy, that they should have been doing for years. Suddenly those things fall apart a little bit. And there's one bit you do an extended canter or something, and then you drop into trot in front of the judge, and that transition always catches people out, because the horse is so used to going canter walk or canter hole that quite often people would miss it. And with Fig, he was so on the ball, I never once missed that. It was more the fact that I just couldn't get anything except canter around the corner. So it's quite interesting. I remember there was one outing that we had, which is a place not too far from here called Bury Farm. It's like a massive equestrian centre. And the judge was somebody who, I say they're a nice judge because their comments always make sense. They're applicable to every horse. So if your horse needs to be more relaxed to its top line, or it needs to be more accepting of the hand, and that's something you can apply to every horse. If you just say your horse needs a bigger medium trot, then he's a thoroughbred at the end of the day. So I don't know how I can suddenly make him move that differently, and that's probably what I found frustrating. But we had a bit of a car crash, PSG. He got 61, so nothing horrendous, like, still really proud of him. But I kind of came out with thinking, oh, that was more mistakes than it was actual movements. And then we had about half an hour's break till I was back in for the Inter One. Went and did that, and he got, I think it's still his personal best, went and got 67 something. Wow. And the judge called me over, and she was like, that test suits him a lot more, doesn't it? And I was like, it's so much easier to ride him. Like, literally from that first turn you make, everything is just easier in that test for him. So, don't panic if you get to elementary and your horse doesn't really enjoy the test. Maybe take a bit of a back seat and then bring him out at medium. It might be better for him. I know plenty of people say that the busier their horse is, the more sort of they can get out of them. And I think, I even see that in my younger horse. By the time we were starting to think about doing a novice, he was going into a prelim thinking, what can I look at today, rather than actually focusing on his job. So even though he was more than ready for it and he did really well, I was already thinking, you need to move up a level to keep that little beady brain of yours occupied. He's got his pig eye rolling about, looking at things that he can look at. But I mean, Fig certainly sort of floored me at every level. Taught me never to put a limit on any horse, because you just don't know where you're going to end up. If somebody had told me, like, when I got him, 8 years ago now, if somebody had told me that I would have achieved what I did, I would have been like, you're absolutely ridiculous. There's no way I'm ever going to be that person or have that horse. And now I am. And I'm just a normal person. I have one lesson a month with a professional. And otherwise, I sort of rely on myself. And I think surrounding yourself with the right people is really important. My friends are all people that I know I can send a video of, whether it's good or a bit rubbish, and they'd give me their honest opinion, and they'd never be, sending it on and being nasty. I never have to worry what they're going to think, and I can bounce any kind of strange idea off them. I mean, again, my sister's had some seriously quirky horses, where we've had to take an approach sometimes where you think, oh God, is this really going to work? And it does.
Yeah.
And we really rely on each other in that sense, and I think having that support frame is really key. I've only got a couple of friends that aren't horsey at all, and even they kind of appease my perfectionist nature if I'm really stressing about something, and they can still manage to sort of temper my nature of being like, no, you've done this, remember what you've achieved with Fig, because even they can recognize what that horse has achieved, even if they don't quite understand it the way that like yourself or I would.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
But yes, having a positive sort of network around you is really key, because if you surround yourself with negative people and you're constantly worrying about what you might be doing wrong before you've done it, then you're going to stress yourself out. If I could tell myself one thing, rewinding like 5-6 years, it'd be just to enjoy it a bit more, because there were so many times that I came out of tax and I did well and figured done really well, and I'd be berating myself for not riding a circle perfectly or messing up a transition. And that kind of attitude really then grates on the people that are around you if you come out and nothing's ever good enough. And you know what, it often is good enough, and if something goes wrong, it mostly doesn't look as bad as you thought it did. So don't panic and just wait and see what the judge is going to tell you did wrong anyway, because that's really who you're there to impress. But definitely relax and enjoy it a bit more. That would be my top tip.
That's so true. Everything you've said, it just hits home so hard, and I love it. And so the future for you, I know we touched on it earlier when we spoke briefly, was that you think that you'll have another off the track horse one day, but while you've got your young warm blood, you don't want two of the same. So maybe the next horse you get will be another off the tracker.
Yeah, because obviously I grew up with native ponies. I had a Welsh Section B and then a Connemara, and I was fortunate enough that I could ride sort of the horses that my sister had, because she was really into show jumping at the time. So they tended to be warm blood types, and they are all different shapes and sizes. We had everything from your super modern, wasp waisted warm bloods that you can never put weight on, to the massive leg at each corner type. So we had a real variety of horses come through our yard. And I got to ride all of them for one reason or another, usually when I was hijacking them when I was back from uni. But yeah, I mean, I just didn't want, when I looked for another horse, I didn't want to have 2X races at the time. And I think if Fig possibly hadn't given me what he had, then I might look to immediately go and find that challenge somewhere else. But I think it's his personality that does it more for me, because if I don't mind horses that aren't particularly cuddly, that's fine, I can cope with that. But I can't deal with if I get a horse that, let's say, it's the most amazing thing to ride, but it's not very nice to be around. Part of that like sort of relationship with the animal is what I'm about. I'm an amateur. I do this for my own gratification. And if you've got a horse that is a bit nasty and bites and kicks, then I don't really want to be around it. So it's my ultimate fear that I will have a horse that's just not a very nice person. And I've managed to sort of choose them quite well so far. I mean, the warm blood that I've got, he's a bit nippy, but he doesn't mean it at all. It's more like, can I chew this, and what happens if I yank it? And quite often it'll be the hood of my coat that's definitely attached to me, so I tend to get pulled backwards with it. But yeah, it's my ultimate fear that I'll get something that is not at all what Fig is. And I think I will always compare every horse I have to him in one way or another. And when I've had him and another horse in work at the same time, I'm constantly like, oh, well, Fig does this and Fig does that. And the horse that I actually sold, he was a big warm blood, and he was big and slow moving, and he wasn't lazy. I mean, he was very nappy, but actually when he was on side, he was very active. But I could apply everything that I'd have with Fig in some way, and almost, because I knew the reaction that I was looking for from Fig, because Fig was always so on the ball with being off your leg and being super sharp. So I knew what reaction I was looking for. So he's given me that base for absolutely everything. So I dread the day that I get a horse where he's completely the opposite of what Fig is. And I say he because I I don't get on with mares and I can't be bothered with stallions. So it will always be a gelding
Good
for me.
call.
It will always be a gelding. Yeah. I mean, my dad came over when I brought Rooney, my younger one, home, and he has got that kind of stallion presence around him where he was cut late. And he went to me, he was like, "This new one?" I was like, "Yes, Dad." He goes, it's not a stallion, is it? I was like, no. He was like, "Oh, thank God, I can't deal with that again," because he just wants an easy life. Because on the rare occasions that where I'm at work, I have someone who comes and helps me out Monday to Friday whilst I'm still in the office. And on the rare occasion they can't, or I'm on holiday or something, and he's got to be around them, I don't want him dealing with something that's gonna do anything it shouldn't really. So nice horses only, please. Yeah. Sorry to any of the ones, but I don't want you. And it's got to be about that for me, because I want something that I can trust. You know, we had a really quirky show jumping mare. She was lovely to ride. Point her at any fence, any stride, any distance, and she'd go. And she was lovely to ride, like super light and like a real lady's ride. Yeah. And in the stable, she was a complete menace. You have to walk outside of her stable so that she would just lunge over her door and try and take a chunk out of you. Wow. And leading her around, she was fine. She was just very aggressive about her stable space. Yeah. And I just never want a horse like that. So it's got to be something nice for me. But yeah, figures like my baseline for horses now. Yeah. But it's quite interesting because I've got Fran Houlihan, who trained him. I've got her on Facebook, and she loves seeing his updates and everything. And then I'm in touch with Pippa Kirkby, who's Philip's wife, who had him for hurdling over here. Yeah. And everyone that I've spoken to about him always says the same thing, like he's such a lovely horse, and he just is. He's such a nice boy to be around. He's so caring, and he's so spatially aware. Like, he would absolutely be horrified if he even trod on your toe, let alone like had you fall off him. Yep. So yeah, it's a real reputation that he's got for being a nice horse. Yeah. And like all of his recent issues with his laminitis, like the vet and the farrier, they both, I think, spend a little bit more time here than necessary, purely because it's such a nice horse to be around. Yeah. And like obviously he can't have them done anymore, but when he was having his hock injections, like in the past 2 years, like the vet that did those, because I take him down to the clinic for those, the vet that was doing those was like, "Oh, he's just such a nice horse. He's so nice." And you just find yourself spend hours like cuddling him, because he just wants to be around people. He does this funny thing where like he will put his neck round in front of you and he'll like pull you in for a hug. Aww. And the moment you try and walk away, he like pulls you in a bit tighter, like, no, I'm not done yet. So he's a real soppy boy. But yeah, I'm excited about the prospect of getting back on him. And if all I ever do is walk, trot and canter, that'll be enough for me, definitely.
Well, it sounds like you've led an incredible journey with him and learnt a lot from him, and that there's a lot more to come from you with your young horse, and also another off the track one day. But we're almost at an hour and a half, so I thank you so much for your time, and I really recommend, because I had a look at your Diamonds in the Rough dressage on YouTube, and I loved watching all the videos of Fig. So I definitely recommend that, and on Facebook as well, just to follow your progression. But thank you so much for your time and talking to us about your Figaro, because I know there's a lot of it inspires a lot of people out there. I know that the Australian Thoroughbred's really well known as an eventer, but for me, coming from a dressage background, all I've ever wanted to do is ride Grand Prix, and it's so nice to know that you can do it, and that they can do it on a thoroughbred. So thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
That's no problem. Thank you very much for having me.